And this is the fourth of my things that not many people seem to know about COVID-19. Now, physical distancing, everyone's heard of physical distancing, but what they don't seem to understand is how important it is and how you have to do it all the time. So it's very difficult to, if you're constantly having to make these social decisions, how much distance should I keep with this person? They seem to want to be rather close. What do I do about that? Do I let them or do I let them not? Do I, or maybe I find myself being rather close to this person. Was that right or was it not? And then you're constantly thinking, is this situation I'm out of doors? Maybe it doesn't matter if I'm out of doors, or maybe it does. It's not very clear, and the guidance isn't very clear, or it is clear but it's not stressed and repeated. The simple thing is, get yourself an implementation intention. That's like whenever you get in a car, you click, you put your safety belt on. If you want to be safe in a car, that's the way to just have a habit of always doing it, not constantly deciding, because then you become forgetful, and sometimes you will and sometimes you won't, and it'll add to the stress in your life. But if you make it so you always do that, then it gets much simpler, and you can keep that up indefinitely. Like all your life, you've been looking both ways as you cross the road, and all your life, since you were, except when you were very young, of course, and your parents made sure you did it, and you put your safety belt on in the car. So it's like that. So whenever you meet up with someone, if you're socializing with them, and then the other thing people don't realise, they get scared of people just walking past them, and you get these people, they go into a shop, and then they're terrified to be very close to someone in the shop. They go out of doors and they start chatting to someone within half a metre outside the shop. And maybe less so now, but it still seems to happen a fair bit. It's everywhere. It's the actual chatting is when the risk was. Just going past them, if they're not talking, then you don't have a risk. It's the droplets that come out when they're talking, that this physical distancing is to protect you against. Talking, coughing, laughing, shouting, singing, that sort of thing. Again, many of the people I help don't know this. I'm simply connecting you with what the World Health Organization say, and people like that, and the CDC in this case. And that's my own text that I've added. When you interact, step back, not forward. So they don't make it so clear, really, but it's really when you interact that's the important thing. It gets much more difficult if you walk down the street, you try and avoid everyone and be 1 metre away from everyone, or 2 metres away, even harder. But it's not really where it's at. If it makes some people uncomfortable, that's a good thing to do. But really, you're bound to have people go past you much closer than 2 metres and closer than 1 metre. But that's not the situation. It's when you're talking to each other and the droplets are coming out of your mouth. So that's the other thing that the people I help generally don't realise. First, it should be automatic and you always do it, and second, that makes it much easier, and it is the droplets and that you should do it both inside and outside, winter, summer. And inside you also want to have good ventilation. If you have poor ventilation and lots of people, especially doing strenuous activities, for some reason, even if you just got one index case and you have half a dozen people in a room and doing dance fitness or something, then they get infected more easily. It's a little bit mysterious. But if you've got good ventilation in your space, especially people exercising indoors, that's what you've got to be careful about, and people singing indoors. But apart from that, if you're just sitting around at a table talking, you are protected by being 1 metre away. You don't really need the mask. The mask is for the situations where you can't do the physical distancing. The physical distancing does the protecting. And that's why the World Health Organization in their social media Q/A, they don't wear masks. And they're constantly being asked, you get all these things where press interviews and so on, where people are wearing masks. And you ask, why don't the World Health Organization wear masks? The answer is, you don't need to. Not in that situation. If it's good ventilation and you're indoors, and The reason is because the big droplets of speech are the ones that really infect you with the virus, and you need like 15 minutes contact within a meter. That is when you're likely to get it. Or very large amounts, like someone coughs right in your face, or something like that. The reason is that a single droplet, even with a virus in it, is not your innate immune. You have an innate immune system that doesn't need to learn anything, that will fight off any intruders, even not knowing what they are. But it can be overwhelmed if you get lots of virus. And when you get lots of virus, it can't fight them off until it's learned to recognize them. So that's basically the idea behind this. The idea is not to stop every single virus. Maybe some tiny droplets will have single viruses in them, but it's the big droplets that are the ones that you need to keep out. And if you do that, then that's like click with safety belts. So always step back at least 1 meter. If your country says 2 meters, do it 2 meters. It doesn't really matter so much how the distance, it's always stepping back. And most of the people I help don't know this simple point. And they focus on so many other things. So it doesn't spread very easily on surfaces. It doesn't spread, so we don't know. We actually don't have any action. So people worry about going to the shops. They worry about walking past someone in the shop, but you're not talking to them. That's not a risk. They worry about picking something up in the shop and then taking it back home, and then how soon after that can I eat it? And if I touch that thing and then touch my eyes, then does that mean I got COVID-19? Well, that is not where your focus should be. So do all that. Do wash. Do keep things clean. Wash your hands frequently, especially before you touch your eyes, nose, and mouth. That is also important. But you should, if you are worrying about that, and you're talking to people within 1 meter, you're looking in the wrong direction. It's the distancing, physical distancing, is absolutely the central point here. And there isn't any actual, as far as I know, there's no direct proof of it being transmitted via surfaces. So that doesn't mean it isn't done that way. The problem is that it's usually a situation where people are talking at close contacts, and then they're touching surfaces as well, and it's hard to disentangle whether it was a surface thing or whether it was the talking that was the reason that they got it. But so long as you keep your normal washing your hand frequently as well, and washing surfaces, you're not going to get much virus that way. And do those precautions, but mainly the focus on physical distancing. That's the most important thing. And again, people I help are often just they're very worried about physical objects they're touching, and they're very worried about touching the eyes, nose and mouth. They worry about buying food and then touching the food package, and this is not where your risk is. So it's good if you want to, and it's good, and I do it. When you get your food back from the shop, wash the outside, especially using it that day, a little bit of soap. So soap, this virus is very vulnerable to soap. Most viruses are not. Many viruses are not. But this particular virus, basically one soap molecule and it explodes, essentially. And it attracts soap as well. So this is very vulnerable to soap. So it's actually better than alcohol rub. If you've got the choice of alcohol rub and of soap, use the soap. It's far better. Although good alcohol rub will also it will work. And so if you've got a little bit of soap or detergent, something like that, then just gently wipe the outside of whatever it is, and then it's free of virus. So, and that's another thing that not many people seem to realise, the power of soap and how important soap is for COVID-19. It's the miracle cure. You've got lots of people looking for miracle cures, and power soap COVID-19 many more times. I've got a good article about it. See if I can find it. Yes, why soap? I can see it there, but frustratingly I have to read through this before I can get to it. Why soap works. You come down a bit and wait for it to come up. Where's their image? To accept. There we are, how soap works. So there you can see that there's the spike protein and the hydrophilic head and the soap, the water shining layer, tails of the soap. Then they wedge themselves into the lipid membrane and they pry it apart, and then basically it explodes it. And then the soap traps what's left. And that's basically how soap basically explodes COVID-19. And the reason is because it's wrapped in lipid membranes. And this is some of the others that are easily destroyed with soap. But there's some other ones, and the hand sanitizers with at least 60% ethanol do act similarly, but they can't easily move. And so the viruses do not depend on lipid membranes and bacteria that protect their delicate membranes. Yes, so they're explaining about more resilient microbes and more resilient viruses, but this is not resilient at all. So, just a few drops of soap, wipe your hands, and it's gone. So again, that's another thing that not many people seem to realise, is how effective soap is in protecting against COVID-19 or detergent, things like that. So if you get something from the shops, you really don't need to worry about that at all. But if you want to just gently wipe it with soap, and the first day that you got it back, I tend to do that. And there's certainly any surfaces, but that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is the physical distancing. So anyway, and do that, and you'll be doing your bit to stop this virus. And it really helps a lot. If you can stop it, then you're not just stopping it for you. You're stopping it for all the people that you could infect. Oh yes, and so I was going to explain as well. We often get children in the group asking and saying, but in the group I can't physically distance. And that's in school. And that is really a rather sad thing. In the United Kingdom, they haven't permitted children who want to physically distance and who want to wear masks. They're simply not permitted to do it. So naturally, we've had worried children in the UK, age 13 upwards is what you can join Facebook, and they come to our group and they say, I'm scared because I don't want to get COVID, but the school won't let me physically distance from the other children. It must be very difficult. Well, of course, children are much less vulnerable than adults, and mainly it's the concern. They are concerned about what if I get to school and bring it home to my parents, my grandparents, and they're concerned about that, and also sometimes concerned about their own health as well. And it can have bad effects on your health as well. Even for young people, occasionally they can die, even below 20. But that's so rare for you below 20; it's almost unheard of. So you don't need to worry about that. But but certainly, a lot of them want to protect their family. So what you have to do is just do as much as you can. So particularly if you're turning to talk to someone at school, then that's when it can go across to you. Remember, it's like these droplets going out to the mouth as you talk, kind of spray of droplets. So try to, you can't see the droplets. If you could see them, you could get your head out of the way. But when somebody's talking to you, just not be looking, step back if you can. Try and have less time actually talking to them side by side. Try to keep looking forward and educate them about it. And then just minimise the amount of physical distancing. Wear a mask whenever you can, when you're permitted to. And just minimise the time that you spend in these situations as much as you can, and that will you will be greatly reducing your risk. You'll be the child in your school with about the least risk of getting COVID-19 if you do that. So that's the seems the best advice. And then as soon as you're out of the school gates, then you can do your physical distancing as much as you like with everyone. And just rather sadly, in the United Kingdom, the children who want to do physical distancing haven't been permitted to do it in the schools. I think it's really, I don't think they should have done that. They should have, at least the ones who wanted to do physical distancing should have been permitted to do it. Should have found a way to permit it. And the ones who want to wear a mask should be allowed to wear a mask. Anyway, so it's the same with adults. If you've got a job where you've got to be close with people and maybe a mask isn't even practical, you just do what you can. Focus on things you can do and don't worry too much about things you can't. That's one of the things that Mike Ryan said in his talks, that it's a case of reducing risk. If you're leading an active life, then you can't completely stop it if you're in these situations. If you can always physically distance, I run no risk at all because I don't have to. I work from home. I can physically distance with everyone. My risk is probably lower than my risk of being killed in a car accident. So you can certainly do that, and you probably is if you're at a school, and even then, if you do all these precautions, you probably manage to reduce your risk for that year to below your car accident risk. So think about it like that. So maybe you haven't quite achieved total perfection, but to reduce it down to below your car accident risk, probably significantly below that, then that's well worth doing. Not many people die in car accidents. So that is an achievable objective to aim for, even if you are in a situation where it's quite difficult to protect yourself. And certainly to do whatever you can, and you can hugely reduce the risk, and protect both yourself and your loved ones at home. And what's more, in this way you're a kind of superhero. You're like Spider-Man with his mask and everything, and you're the superhero who's stopping this virus. And if you stop it getting to you, you stop it from going from you to anyone else. And that's true for all of us, not just children. For all of us. And we can stop it. Every bit that we're doing to break transmission in that direction from others to us is also breaking transmission from us to others. And then if we do the physical distancing, it's also, if I did have COVID-19, then physical distancing is also going to stop that as well. You see? So you're protecting everyone. You're not just protecting yourself. So I'll stop at that's my fourth one. So just mind of the four things. So first of all was the breathlessness, that many people don't realise that if you get even slightly breathless with COVID-19, try to get one of these oxygen monitors if you have COVID-19, and monitor your breathlessness, monitor your oxygen. If your oxygen dips at all, contact the emergency line that's provided. It's not made clear in NHS, it's made very clear in the CDC. And if you do ring them up, they will treat it as an emergency. Well, they'll first talk to you and make sure that what you've got seems like it's a breathlessness or oxygen. And then if it is, they'll likely send an ambulance around. And the reason is not because you're at immediate risk of dying or anything like that, but you are at risk of dying if you try to home treat and not get everyone and not contact the doctors at all. That is not wise. You can home treat the discomfort, you can't home create the lack of oxygen. So that was the first, the lack of oxygen. Then there was the isolation, that so many people don't realise that the purpose of isolation is to protect your own household, most of all. It's not clearly explained by some of the governments. And that you almost certainly, if you have symptoms of COVID-19, you probably have not yet passed it on to the rest of your household. If you isolate at that point, you can protect them. Not many of the people I've talked to know that. Then there's the quarantine. Not many of the people I talk to know that how the quarantine works is that the quarantine, if you're a contact, is because the possibility you're already infected. So the virus would be in you but not yet causing symptoms, and then how very long it is, and that you quarantine again to protect your household primarily, most of all. The main reason you quarantine is to protect your household, because 80% of the transmission is to households. And again, not many of the people I talk to know that. And that was the key to China's success, was quarantine contacts away from their household. And in the UK, there's a lot of books on quarantine contacts, but they're not doing very well trained. And then the other thing was that you can do your own contact tracing. That nearly everyone that is a contact is someone you actually know. You know how to get in touch with them, or you can contact your boss or something. It could be someone you've spent a quarter of an hour talking to, at very close, within a metre. So someone you're quite familiar with, and someone that you know well enough to talk to for a quarter of an hour and stretch. Then you probably can find their contact details in one way or another, or get someone else to contact them. So you can do the contact tracing yourself. You can do just about all the contact tracing. You don't need to have a contact tracer ring you up. Just think over and over, who was I talking to that morning before I started feeling sick, or the previous day? Did I talk to my neighbour? Did I talk to someone else? And when I talked, was I doing the physical distancing? If not, then it's a good idea to ring them up and warn them that perhaps they got COVID from you, and that they should quarantine away from their own household. If we all did this, we all did these 4 things. Well, the first one is would reduce the number of deaths of people who die because they didn't get oxygen treatment, especially the ones who try to self-medicate at home, and some of those die. And then the other 3 would hugely reduce the transmission. If everyone who had the symptoms of COVID-19 do familiarise, make sure you've got the symptoms, if they all got tested, if they isolated as soon as they have the symptoms until they're waiting for the test from the rest of their household, if they then test positive, they then stay isolated all the way through, and at least 10 days, or the conditions as to how long you should isolate for. 14 days, some people would say, but if there were 2 negative tests. But the main thing, especially right at the beginning, and for the first week or two, up to 10 days or so, most important time. And then, if you are a contact, and everyone who was a contact was to quarantine properly, if we did all, and then with the physical distancing, if everyone just automatically has an implementation intention, did the physical distancing in daily life whenever they can. You don't have to be perfect. If you are a child at school, you can't do it while you're at school. It may be depending on what your government has decided for your schools, or maybe some work you're doing where you can't. But if you can, whenever you can, every situation you can, as soon as you leave the school doors, or at any place in the school where you can, then physically distance, wear the mask whenever you can. Then, if we all did this, we wouldn't need the vaccine. We could literally end it without the vaccine. Absolutely certain. And we don't even need the contact tracers. We do need the testing. We don't need the contact tracing, because if we all understood this, and you all did this, we would be doing our own contact tracing. Our friends would want to know that they're a contact. in order to protect their families. If they understood this clearly, then they would want to quarantine, and they would want to know first. And then if you hear that someone else has COVID-19, then ring them up to find out. Don't wait to be contacted by the contact tracers. We could do that as a grassroots movement. Even if the governments aren't doing that, we can at least protect some of the people, and we're doing our bit to help reduce transmission in our region, in our community, locally, or online community. So by explaining this, I'm helping reduce transmission from and to people in the Doomsday Debunked Facebook group and the communities that they share these videos with. Then it's sort of, maybe it's only a few dozen, a few hundred, or a few thousand people that are affected by that. But if you all do that, then that helps with social media. It could also influence the governments, which are not, they're not, sadly, the UK government is not really on the ball here. It's really basically dusted out its plans for a flu pandemic and a few COVID-19 tweaks. And it's, as I said in one of my other videos, I haven't received a single leaflet through my door about COVID-19. I haven't received a single email from the government about it. I tend to watch the BBC, and they have constant adverts for their own programmes. I haven't seen a single advert from the UK government on the BBC. It's just the BBC, which is basically it doesn't have advertising, and it just has ads for its own programmes. And there's been nothing on that. And it should be at least every day. In the middle of the news, we have 4 or 5 of these things, same ones over and over again. Most people have seen each of them probably 100 times this year. For most of them, you add a weather app that's constantly just about every news program. There's that. There's This Day in History. There's I can't remember what the other ones are. There's there's something about their news thingy, and I can't remember them all, about online news getting to you and stuff. And these just over and over and over the same ads. I skip through them and watch it in iPlayer because I've seen them all before. But they never, I haven't seen a single informational thing about COVID-19 in ever. So, and these things should be explained, these 4 things. It's other things as well, but these 4 things, I know for certainty, hardly anyone in the UK knows these things. So, they should. We should just have a leaflet with these 4 things on them. Little 1-page leaflet would explain part of it, or 4 pages, and links to the World Health Organization website, because sadly the UK NHS doesn't explain these things very well, or to the US CDC. Both of those have good information on it, or update the NHS website so it has much more careful and thorough description of how you protect yourself. And very easy to read, easy to understand. The face space, what is the thing? Face something space. I forget it, but it's just so vague, and it's not clear. It's absolutely, because I get so many people contacting me who just don't know these things, so obviously it's not working. It's not clear enough. So anyway, we can't change the way our governments behave directly. We can try and influence them, we can try contacting them, but we can change our own behaviour, and with our own behaviour we can certainly do a lot to help reduce the transmission in our own community. We can protect our own households, we can communicate good information, we can help the people that we know, we can give them the information about the World Health Organization, encourage them to watch the World Health Organization live chats, which never are shown on BBC, but they're excellent. World Health Organization social media Q-Sachet, it answers the questions that you actually have, rather than the questions that the journalists put to them for you. Anyway, I will stop this now, and hopefully this will help. If it's just one if just one or two people who watch this, then they are a bit more careful, and then it doesn't get to their family, and it maybe either saves a life or it saves someone from long COVID, then this was well worth doing. Just don't feel that you have to change the entire world, but just find the best information you can. And this is the way, and Mike Ryan talks about this. I'm helping the World Health Organization, Mike Ryan. There's a thing called flooding the pitch, flooding the field from American football. He's saying we need to flood the internet with good information. So I'm just helping, I'm joining, this is part of the flood hopefully, and we need more of that. There's so much infodemic stuff that goes around, goes viral, scares people, misinformation, and so try and get the good information out there. Not trying to persuade people, it's not trying to program them or anything like that. It is giving them access to the best scientific information there. That is the valuable thing about the internet. We all have at our fingertips, just type a few sentences into your keyboard and you can be right there at the best scientific information in the entire world. But you need to know how to go there. You need to know where it is. And you can also just type a few things and you find pandemic or something, and then you come to believe that wearing a mask it makes you more. That's one of the things in pandemic. I'll do a separate video about pandemic. It's rather a ridiculous thing. I'll do that separate. For instance, trying to tell people, pandemic tells people that if you wear a mask, then it increases your risk of getting COVID-19. The claim is that if you've got the virus in you already, then you breathe out into the mask, then it'll come back into you, then you're more likely to be infected. That's absolute nonsense. Nobody knows where that comes from. Because if you've got the virus in you already, you're already infected, breathing out and then getting caught in the mask and coming in, it's not going to make any difference. It's already in you. It's a ridiculous thing. So there's a lot of bad information out there, but there's also a lot of good information out there. So I'm trying to help you, to connect you to the good information, and please try and do that with the people that you help. And so the likes of the World Health Organization, the CDC, the NHS is good. It's just got gaps in it, sadly. But what is there is excellent. And just access as much good information as you can find, and then make your own decisions about what you do based on understanding why you quarantine, why you isolate, why you step back. So with all these things I explained the why for each one. Why you ring up emergency immediately if you're breathless. If you understand why you do all those things, then you can make your own decision whether to do them. And that then is up to you, but it's kind of pretty clear what are the best things to do in those situations. Sometimes with things like physical distancing, and there's be balancing things that you've got to think about, but then try and then try and make implementation intentions so these things become automatic. And if you have decided in advance you're going to quarantine, when the moment comes, if you do need to quarantine, then persist through it and find out how, for instance, maybe your local shop will deliver, or maybe there's a volunteer organisation that will deliver, or you can order over the internet. And don't just sort of stop and say, oh, I've got to quarantine, but I've run out of milk, what am I going to do? And try to find out how you can do that without leaving the house, if that's what you need to do. And if you're quarantining, so it's not easy. It's difficult times, but if we do all of this, we could eliminate it without a vaccine. The vaccine is to plug the gaps. It's to help with people. It's the only reason we need a vaccine, in fact, is because we're not doing this. The only reason. And then the other thing, I should make this a fifth thing. Not many people seem to really understand that the reason that we are in lockdown in the United Kingdom and in parts of the United States is because we're not doing these things. That's the only reason we're in lockdown. So try and explain that to everyone, that if you do all this, then you don't need lockdown. Taiwan did this vigorously, and Taiwan never went into lockdown. China had a lockdown for Wuhan, and surrounding areas had a kind of partial lockdown. Most of China, which is over 1 billion people, 1.3 billion people or something, most of China didn't have a lockdown because they did all this stuff. And so if you use these methods, you don't actually need a lockdown at all. We could have stopped it in February, and if we had all done this in February, but we now know for the future, and we have learnt the lesson from COVID-19, which China originally had a previous experience with SARS, so that's why they responded so quickly, and same with Taiwan. But we haven't got white muscle memory, so that's the problem, and that's why we've had this problem. Anyway, so hopefully that helps. That's the fourth one, and a kind of wrap up of the whole thing. And I'll make an article with all 4 videos in it, and linking to all the same things as the link to in the video descriptions for people who prefer to read about it all. And so I'll upload, and this will be the last one of the 4, and I'll put a link to all the videos, and I'll put a link to the article in the video description, and then the article will have the other videos. I might put the other videos in as well. We'll see. To start with, I'm just going to upload this with the links, and then I'll make a new article, and then I'll add this video to